The galaxy trembled the day humanity's truth was unearthed. They were never meant to be. Their existence was a cosmic error, a genetic accident that defied the laws of creation itself. The Elders, the ancient masters of the universe, had tried to erase them from history once before, and now, upon realizing their failure, they would try again. But this time, humanity was awake. And they were angry. The void of space was silent, but Elias Voss could hear the pulse of his own heartbeat like a war drum in his chest. The abandoned Elder's ship drifted in the nebula's crimson mist, an omen of something ancient, something wrong. His strike team had already boarded, moving like shadows through the derelict corridors, rifles raised, nerves stretched thin. "Commander, we've got something," came Corporal Dax's voice through the comms, thick with tension. Voss advanced toward the core chamber, his boots silent against the steel floor. The ship was dead, yet he felt like he was walking through something that still breathed, something waiting. The doors slid open with a guttural hiss, revealing a scene that froze even a battle-hardened soldier like him. Corpses. Not human. Elder. But their deaths had been anything but normal. Their bodies were twisted, flesh petrified in states of sheer agony. Their skulls were caved in from the inside, as if their own minds had turned against them. "What the hell happened here?" Dax whispered, his fingers twitching on his trigger. Voss ignored the bodies. His attention was on the central data core, still pulsing faintly with residual energy. Whatever was here, whatever had killed them, it hadn't wiped the records. That was a mistake. The Elders never left mistakes. "Sink the core," Voss ordered, stepping forward. Sergeant Rios placed the uplink device onto the console. The moment the data transfer began, the chamber flickered, lights crackling, systems sputtering to life. Something in the ship had noticed them. "Commander, we should go," Dax warned, shifting uneasily. Then, the first images hit the screen. Voss narrowed his eyes as grainy, corrupted footage played. A world scorched and broken. A planet he recognized. Earth. But not as history had told it. Not as humanity remembered it. Lines of text scrolled rapidly, but his mind only focused on one phrase: humanity was never meant to be. "What the hell is this?" Rios breathed. The video changed. Genetic data. Human DNA spliced with unknown sequences. Failed experiments. Discarded prototypes. And then, the anomaly. The one strand that had defied expectation. The one that had escaped termination. The Elders hadn't discovered humanity. They had created them. And when they realized their mistake, when they saw something in humans that terrified them, they tried to erase it. But it didn't work. Voss felt his breath slow, his pulse steady. The pieces were falling into place, too fast, too heavy, but undeniable. The wars, the disappearances, the unsolved mysteries of human origins. The entire foundation of their existence was a lie. And now they knew. "Shut it down," he ordered, but before Rios could move, the ship screamed. Not an alarm. Not a siren. A sound that came from the walls, the floors, the very bones of the ship, a psionic wail that tore through their skulls. Dax dropped his weapon, clutching his head. Rios fell to his knees, blood leaking from his nose. Voss felt it too. A force pressing against his mind, trying to break him. "You should not be here." The voice wasn't spoken. It was in him, crawling through his brain like a parasite. "You were erased. You are a mistake." Voss gritted his teeth, pushing back against the force clawing at his skull. He had fought Elders before. He had seen their power. But this was different. This was fear. The Elders were afraid. That realization struck him harder than the pain. They were afraid because he was still standing. He took a step forward, voice like steel. "We're done being erased." With sheer will, he lifted his rifle and fired into the console, shattering the data core. The ship convulsed, the psionic attack collapsing in on itself. The force lifted, and his team gasped for breath, struggling to their feet. "We need to go," Rios groaned, wiping blood from his mouth. Voss grabbed the uplink device, the data still intact. Move! They sprinted through the corridors, the walls vibrating, the dead ship suddenly alive. Lights flared. Machinery screamed. Something was waking up. They made it to the airlock, sealing the door behind them just as the ship began to shift, its structure warping like metal under heat, twisting, screaming. Voss slammed into his seat aboard the dropship. Get us out of here! The pilot didn't hesitate. The thrusters roared, and they shot through the nebula, the Elder's ship collapsing behind them in a gravitational implosion. Silence filled the cabin. Labored breathing. Shaken nerves. And then the realization. They had the truth. The High Accord would see this as an act of war. And humanity would never kneel again. Voss closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. The storm was coming. And this time, they were ready. The void stretched endlessly, the silence broken only by the hum of the war room aboard the battleship Ironclad. Holographic projections flickered across the command deck, displaying a dozen human colonies under siege. The Elders weren't waiting. They had declared extermination. Elias Voss stood at the center, eyes locked on the carnage unfolding in real time. Fleets burning. Cities crumbling. Entire worlds dying. This isn't a war, Rios muttered. It's a damn execution. They're making a statement, Voss said, his voice like steel. They're scared. They don't want anyone knowing what we found. Across the deck, Admiral Kane's weathered face was carved with barely contained fury. Scared or not, they have superior firepower. We've lost 4 systems in less than a week. Our forces are crumbling. Voss didn't blink. Then we stop crumbling. The officer stiffened. Eyes turned to him. Kane exhaled sharply. Commander, in case you haven't noticed, they have reality warping, mind-breaking gods on their side. We have grit and ballistics. We're outmatched. No. Voss let the words settle. We're evolving. Silence. Explain, Kane demanded. Voss placed the uplink device onto the central console. Data streamed. Elder archives, experiments, genetic anomalies. Proof that humanity had surpassed their original purpose. Proof that the more they fought, the stronger they became. Kane's jaw clenched. You're telling me the reason some of our soldiers are surviving psionic attacks is because they're adapting? Voss finished. Faster than the Elders expected. Faster than the Elders can counter. A lieutenant scoffed. That's a nice theory, but how do we test it? Throw men into the fire and see who comes out alive? Voss stepped forward. We are in the fire. And we've already come out alive. Rios leaned in. Commander, you're saying we push harder? Force their hand? No. We don't force their hand. Voss's eyes burned with something dangerous. We rip it off. Kane frowned. What exactly are you suggesting? Voss tapped the console, and a new projection appeared, an Elder War Spire, a command station that anchored the High Accord's entire fleet in a sector-wide neural network. They think they control the battlefield through psionics, Voss said. We take this? They lose that control. Their ships? Disconnected. Their soldiers? Disoriented. You want to attack a war spire? Kane's voice was sharp. That's suicide. No. Voss's grin was lethal. It's humanity at its finest. The room was still. Officers exchanged glances. Then Kane's expression shifted. The hesitation faded, replaced by something colder. Tell me how we win. The drop was chaos. The moment Voss and his strike team broke atmosphere, the war spire's defense grid ignited, filling the sky with molten fire. Fighters twisted through the storm, explosions lighting up the void. Shields at 15%! Rios shouted over the comms. Voss barely reacted. Push through. A railgun round ripped past them, grazing their hull, but the dropship punched forward. Below, the war spire loomed, a monolithic tower of obsidian and pulsing blue veins of psionic energy. The center of Elder control. And in minutes, it would be theirs. Brace! The pilot barked as the ship shuddered under impact. The moment it hit the landing zone, the The side doors exploded outward, and Voss was already moving. Gunfire erupted. Elder constructs, twisted, floating machines infused with psionic energy, descended like wraiths. Voss fired first. His rifle bucked in his grip, a stream of hyper-accelerated rounds tearing through the constructs. The team followed, moving fast, hitting hard. No hesitation. The elders had always fought from a distance, their psionics, their mind-breaking control. But this was close quarters. This was human warfare. Brutal. Relentless. And the elders weren't ready for it. Rios slashed through a construct with an energy blade, dodging its crackling tendrils. Dax covered the flank, grenades erupting in fiery bursts. Inside! Voss barked. They breached the war spire. The interior pulsed with an eerie glow, like the walls themselves were alive, whispering. Something stirred in the air. Then the voice came. You cannot win. It wasn't spoken. It was inside them. You are children playing at war. Voss's vision blurred. His body locked, a crushing pressure wrapping around his skull. Psionics. Rios screamed, dropping to his knees, clutching his head. Dax convulsed, blood leaking from his nose. And then Voss moved. He shouldn't have been able to. The Elder's power should have left him crippled. But he pushed forward, through the agony. The Elder appeared before him, stepping from the shadows. Tall, ethereal, eyes burning like twin dying stars. You were erased for a reason, it whispered. Voss didn't answer. He raised his rifle. And pulled the trigger. The Elder staggered, its psionic aura flaring as the rounds ripped through its body, its form warping, unraveling. It wasn't invincible. It wasn't untouchable. It was bleeding. Voss advanced. The Elder recoiled. You cannot. Voss ripped his knife from his belt and buried it in the creature's skull. It screamed. Then it died. The pressure snapped, the psionic force collapsing. Rios and Dax gasped, their minds clearing. Voss exhaled slowly. Not so untouchable after all. No time to celebrate. He turned to the core chamber, where the war spire's network relay pulsed. Dax, plant the charge. The soldier moved fast, setting the detonator against the pulsating conduit. 5 minutes to detonation. Voss clicked his comms. Ironclad, get ready for retrieval. A tremor shook the war spire. The entire structure howled, like it could feel its own death approaching. More constructs swarmed. More elders emerged. But something had changed. The elders hesitated. Voss saw it. Felt it. They were afraid. Humanity was never supposed to fight back. Humanity was never supposed to get this far. But they had. And now? Now they would finish it. Time to go! Rios shouted. They ran, cutting down whatever stood in their way. Brutal. Precise. Unstoppable. Voss led them through the fire, through the chaos. The war spire collapsed behind them, the detonator counting down. As they reached the landing zone, the ironclad's dropship roared overhead. They jumped. The ship caught them midair. The war spire erupted behind them, a pillar of fire ripping through the sky. The network collapsed. Across the battlefield, elder fleets lurched, their psionic link severed. They had won. Voss exhaled. The war wasn't over. Not yet. But the first strike had landed. And the elders knew. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. Humanity was winning. The battlefield burned, but Elias Voss only saw opportunity. Across the void, elder warships faltered, their command structure shattered after the destruction of the war spire. The once coordinated attacks had collapsed into disorder. Multiple enemy vessels disengaging, Rios reported, his voice edged with disbelief. They're pulling back. Voss leaned forward. The elders had never retreated before. They fought like gods, demanded obedience. They never ran. Until now. They're scared, he muttered. Kane's face appeared on the holoscreen, the ironclad's bridge vibrating from enemy fire. They won't run for long. We need to press while they're off balance. Voss had already made his decision. We go after their flagship. Silence followed. Even Kane looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You want to go after a dreadnought? Voss, that thing is the size of a damn moon. Voss didn't blink. And now it's vulnerable. Without their psionic network, they're just a ship. The Admiral hesitated. Then, his gaze hardened. You really think we can take it? Voss's smile was cold. I don't think. I know. The dropship screamed through enemy fire, cutting through the chaos as Elder fighters swarmed. The flagship loomed ahead, a leviathan of black steel and pulsing veins of psionic energy. Rios shouted over the comms. Defenses are lighting up. We're a damn beacon out here. Voss remained calm. Let them see us. Dax fired the ship's cannons, ripping apart enemy interceptors as the team braced for impact. The dropship crashed onto the dreadnought's hull, metal shrieking, a cloud of steam hissing as the airlock cutter engaged. Move! Voss barked. The doors burst open, and they were inside, rifles raised. The corridors pulsed, organic and metallic, like the ship itself was alive. Then the voice came. You have made a mistake, human. Voss smirked. We'll see about that. They advanced, clearing the halls with brutal efficiency. Elder constructs tried to intercept, but the team fought like monsters, fast, ruthless, precise. Dax tore through enemy lines, grenades bursting. Rios cut down an armored warrior with a plasma blade, sidestepping its psionic claws. The Elders had always thought humanity would break under their power. But humanity wasn't breaking. They were adapting. Voss led them deeper. The command chamber was near. Then the air cracked. A psionic lord stepped from the void, tall, robed in flowing black, eyes burning with unnatural light. Voss felt the power before it struck. A wave of force slammed into them, hurling Rios and Dax against the walls. Their weapons froze midair, wrenched from their hands by invisible fingers. The Lord levitated forward, its presence suffocating. You are filth. You are nothing. Your kind was meant to be erased. Voss wiped the blood from his mouth and laughed. And yet here we are. The psionic lord extended a hand, and the walls shook. Reality itself warped. Dax gasped, eyes wide. Commander! Focus! Voss ordered. The air grew heavy. His vision blurred. The Lord was inside his mind, trying to rip him apart. And then something snapped. The pressure broke, and Voss stepped forward, through the force, through the attack. The Lord hesitated. Voss grinned. Problem? With a brutal twist, he grabbed his combat knife and drove it into the Elder's chest. The creature screamed, its body flickering, its mind shattering. The psionic grip collapsed, and Rios and Dax sprang forward, unleashing hellfire. The psionic lord fell. Voss stood over the body, knife dripping with something black and unnatural. I've had worse, he muttered. They pressed on. The command chamber was ahead. The doors slid open, revealing the Elder Admiral, tall, imposing, its robes woven with symbols older than human civilization. It turned slowly, voice a whisper of death. You were a mistake. Voss lifted his rifle. You keep saying that. And yet you continue to crawl forward. Like an infection. Like a... Voss fired. The Elder deflected the bullets midair, its psionic shield pulsing. You cannot win. Voss charged. The Admiral lashed out, a shockwave ripping through the chamber. Rios and Dax were thrown backward, their armor fracturing under the pressure. Voss kept going. The Elder twisted reality, bending time itself, but Voss moved before it happened. The Admiral's eyes widened. Voss grabbed its throat. For the first time, an Elder felt fear. You were never gods, Voss snarled. And then he snapped its neck. The body collapsed. The ship shuddered. The bridge was theirs. Dax, plant the virus, Voss ordered. Dax moved fast, slamming the uplink into the console. Code flooded the dreadnought's systems. Alarm screamed. The ship convulsed. Rios gasped. Sir. Voss already knew. They weren't shutting down the ship. They were overriding it. The dreadnought's weapons turned. Outside, elder warships froze as their own flagship locked onto them. Dax's voice was filled with disbelief. "We control it." Voss grinned. "Let's end this." He turned to the main viewport, where elder ships began to scatter. Fire! The dreadnought unleashed hell. The battlefield was a massacre. Human forces rallied, pushing forward as elder ships fell. On the bridge of the ironclad, Kane watched, eyes sharp. "They're running," an officer whispered. Kane exhaled. "Damn right they are." The elders, for the first time in history, were in full retreat. The war wasn't over. But the galaxy had changed. Humanity wasn't a mistake. They were a revelation. And the elders knew. Their time was up. The aftermath of the battle left the void littered with elder wreckage, their shattered vessels drifting lifelessly in the cold embrace of space. For the first time, the High Accord had faltered. For the first time, they ran. Voss stood at the center of the dreadnought's bridge, his team battered but victorious. The war wasn't over, but something had changed. The elders weren't invincible. They bled. And when something bleeds, it can die. Rios wiped the blood from his forehead. "We just hijacked the biggest ship in their fleet. They have to be losing their minds right now." Dax let out a short, sharp laugh. "They probably don't even have a word for what just happened." Voss remained silent, watching the retreating forces. The High Accord had spent thousands of years conditioning the galaxy to fear them, to believe in their dominance. But now, the illusion was cracking. The comms flared to life. Kane's voice was steady but urgent. "Voss, we're picking up something big. Incoming transmission, Elder Command frequency." A direct message from the enemy. That was new. Voss gestured to the comms officer. "Put it through." A hollow, echoing voice filled the chamber, vibrating through the walls. "You do not understand what you have done." Voss smirked. "Enlighten me." The voice was calm, too calm for something that had just lost a warship and a fleet. "You believe this victory matters. You believe that taking one battle makes you more than you are." Voss leaned forward, his voice razor sharp. "It does. Because you're talking instead of fighting." Silence. Then a laugh. It was wrong, ancient, inhuman, something that carried through the bones, through the mind. "You are still bound by your ignorance. You cannot comprehend the forces at play." Voss folded his arms. "I don't need to comprehend anything. I just need to keep killing you until there's none of you left." A flicker of amusement laced the response. "And that is why you were erased the first time." The words hung in the air. No one spoke. Rios broke the silence. "Commander." Voss didn't look away from the holoscreen. "I know." The voice continued. "You were an accident. A miscalculation. And yet you persist. We should have been thorough. This time, we will be." Voss's jaw tightened. "You tried once. You failed. We did not fail. You merely slipped through the cracks. Now those cracks are being sealed." The holoscreen flickered, shifting to a real-time feed of deep space. A location far beyond the battlefield. Something moved in the abyss. Something massive. Dax's voice was barely a whisper. "What the hell is that?" The elder voice remained steady. "The veil of your ignorance is about to be lifted, human." The screen sharpened, the darkness peeling away to reveal something beyond comprehension. A structure. No, a construct. Bigger than any warship. Bigger than a fleet. A machine that pulsed with a power that felt wrong. Rios inhaled sharply. That's not a ship. That's a world." Voss stared. His voice was ice. "What is it?" The elder's voice softened. "The grave you have been digging for yourselves." The feed shifted again, focusing on something even more terrifying. The cradle of stars. The place where humanity had been made. The place where they had been erased. And now, the elders were waking it up. Voss exhaled slowly. "So that's what you're bringing to the fight." A long pause. "We are not bringing it, Commander Voss." The void rippled. Space itself twisted. And then, for the first time, Voss felt something he had never felt before. The presence of something older than the elders. Something they had feared enough to bury. Something awake. The elders' final words were barely a whisper. "It is coming." The transmission cut. Voss clenched his fists. He didn't know what was coming. He didn't know what the elders had hidden. But one thing was certain. It would have to go through humanity first. The stars twisted. Reality cracked. The thing beyond the void had stirred. Elias Voss stood motionless, watching the impossible unfold on the holoscreen. The cradle of stars, the place where humanity was first engineered and then erased, pulsed with something primordial, something that should have stayed buried. Across the bridge, his crew barely breathed. The transmission had ended, but its weight hung over them like a noose. Rios spoke first, his voice raw. "That wasn't a threat. That was a warning." Dax exhaled. "Commander, tell me we have a plan." Voss didn't answer immediately. His mind worked through every possibility, every outcome, every move the elders had just forced onto the board. This wasn't war anymore. This was something worse. Kane's voice cracked through the calms, urgent, sharp. "Voss, tell me you're seeing this." "We see it," Voss said. Kane's tone was stone-hard. "What in the hell did they just wake up?" Voss didn't blink. "That's the question, isn't it?" A new holofeed flickered to life. Not from the ironclad. Not from any human vessel. This was an elder broadcast. It wasn't directed at humanity. It was directed at the galaxy. The image formed, an elder High Lord, his form wavering, the mask of cold superiority fractured with something terrifyingly human. Panic. To all surviving Accord forces. A containment failure has occurred. The cradle has awakened. Voss's gut twisted. He had never heard an elder speak with fear before. Evacuate all non-combat personnel. Deploy maximum force. It must not reach the core systems. Dax's fingers clenched. What the hell does that mean? The holoscreen shifted again. The cradle of stars was changing. No opening. Something moved inside it. Something vast. Something old. And it was leaving. Kane's voice turned cold. "Voss, I need an answer." Voss studied the screen, his hands tight behind his back. His instincts screamed at him, a deep, primal understanding that whatever this was, it was beyond war, beyond strategy, beyond anything he had ever encountered. It was hungry. It was aware. And it had just noticed them. He made his decision. "Prep the fleet. We're going after it." Silence. Then Kane's voice, sharp, cutting. "You can't be serious." "I'm dead serious." Rios turned to him, disbelief flashing across his face. "Commander, we don't even know what it is." Voss nodded. "Exactly. Which is why we can't let the elders handle it first." Dax leaned forward. "Commander, with all due respect, what if it's worse than them?" Voss locked eyes with him. "Then we'll kill it too." The ironclad's bridge fell silent. Kane's voice was lower now, measured. "This isn't our fight, Voss." Voss smirked. "It wasn't our fight when they first tried to erase us either. Look how that turned out." Kane sighed, rubbing his temples. "You know, one of these days you're gonna find a fight you can't win." Voss turned back to the holoscreen, watching the cradle's massive gates groan open, releasing something so black it seemed to consume the starlight itself. The elders were running. Humanity was advancing. He smiled. "Not today!" And then they chased the abyss.